It's a pro-choice organisation that essentially promotes parents making an informed choice about vaccination in New Zealand. So really what it does is provide parents with and other interested people with access to information that's not readily available through the normal official channels, if you like, through the Ministry of Health and various associated agencies, GPs, nurses, and so on. The sort of information that's actually reasonably easy to find if you know what you're looking for, but that many people don't know exists. So really, it's raising awareness about the issues that we believe are of importance. And my particular role is as a researcher and I guess spokesperson for the society, and what that involves is mostly remaining up to date with the latest research and on specific vaccines, and also on, I guess, the political situation internationally. For example, vaccines are mandated in the US, which means that although there are exemptions, you can get religious, philosophical, or medical exemptions depending on which state you're in the US, but essentially your children can't go to school unless they're vaccinated. So the political and social situation in other countries differs at times quite a lot from the situation here in New Zealand.
Can we, on your website, you have 6 basic philosophies around what your organisation is built on. Can you go through those for me? Can we talk about them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I guess we don't. I mean, as individuals within the organisation, I guess most of us tend to believe that health doesn't come from drugs or through the end of the needle. That things like diet, breastfeeding in particular, maternal health, for example, during pregnancy, prior to pregnancy, and so on, are really important factors in setting the health of a child. That natural immunity is far superior to artificial immunity. When you get a childhood disease, and we're not for a moment suggesting that you want to get some of the diseases for which there are vaccines. There's no doubt there are some diseases you want to avoid. But for the childhood diseases, which is pretty much where vaccination started, modern vaccination, we're talking about things like measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis, chickenpox, that sort of thing. Pertussis meaning whooping cough, for those who are not familiar. So for the vast majority of people, if they contract one of those diseases, they develop lifelong immunity. They're childhood diseases, they're a natural part of childhood. In fact, adults who get these diseases often suffer far more than children. And for a modern healthy child, these diseases should not be a problem. So we believe that immunity, lifelong immunity from these diseases is far superior to any vaccine-induced or conferred immunity, because one of the problems with vaccines is we have 2 types of vaccine failure. There's primary vaccine failure, where the vaccine has failed to confer any immunity at all to the recipient, and there's secondary vaccine failure, where the person has developed antibodies to a bacteria or virus, to a disease, but then over time that immunity wanes and they're no longer protected. But because they've been vaccinated, they believe they are protected. So those are 2 of the big problems in terms of the efficacy or the way that vaccines work. So we believe that natural immunity is far superior. Breast milk is a really central, or breastfeeding babies is a really central part of the philosophy around pro-choice and around healthy children. It provides babies with, not only is it the perfect food and is it good for mum and baby, but it provides a lot of immunological protection for as long as breastfeeding continues and beyond. I mean, there have been numerous studies that have shown that long past the time at which most people wean their babies. Breastfeeding offers protection against disease, whether it be, particularly things like respiratory tract infections, all sorts of diseases are associated, or the risk for all sorts of diseases, childhood and otherwise, are associated with a lack of breastfeeding in infancy. So another philosophy is that good health starts with a balanced diet. So good food, and I guess, if you're talking good food, then breast milk has got to be the starting point of a good diet for any child. But beyond that, beyond weaning, healthy food, whole foods, particularly with a prevalence of non-processed foods, these are really, really important. Not too many processed sugars and carbohydrates, no junk food, or not no junk food, but, limited food that the vast majority of people know what the difference is between good and bad food or good and bad diet. So good diet's really essential. Appropriate medical intervention, so appropriate, using modern medicine when it's needed. We've all heard about antibiotic overuse. That's just one example of inappropriate use of modern medicine. What it's about is knowing when to go and see the doctor, when you need to make use of modern medicine and not using it when it's not necessary. Excess x-rays can be dangerous, for example. It's not just about things like drugs like vaccines or antibiotics. Having x-rays when they're not medically necessary can be dangerous. X-rays are ionizing radiation and they cause DNA damage, and that's been known for a long, long time. So, if you're healthy, we know, for example, that vitamin A is critical in infectious diseases, in particular with measles, and it is given in third world countries to children to combat the effects of measles. In a healthy child who gets a decent diet, who's been breastfed, who is well looked after, well nourished, and living in good conditions, these diseases are benign and self-limiting. And in fact, most of these diseases were described just that way until vaccines were developed. Measles, once upon a time, was described as a normal childhood disease, benign and self-limiting. Chickenpox, no one had ever heard of problems with chickenpox until suddenly they developed a vaccine. So, these are diseases that parents of healthy children should not fear.